I don't know why I decided to go that year. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe some weird guilt that I didn't really recognize at the time. I was scrolling through Facebook one afternoon when I saw a post from my cousin Jake. Something about the annual family reunion happening at that usual spot. A big campground out in the woods, miles from anything resembling a town. I hadn't been to one of them since I was a little kid. Back when Mom and Dad would load us up in the old station wagon and make that long drive out there. I barely remembered half the people that would even be there, but something about it pulled at me this time. A last-minute impulse. Jasmine, my fiancée, was not thrilled about the idea. She didn't say it outright, but I could definitely tell she gave me that look when I brought it up. The one that meant, "Are you sure about this?" But she agreed to come along anyway. She knew I'd been feeling kind of disconnected lately, like I was floating between things, and maybe she thought this would actually help. The drive was pretty long, 4 hours away from the city. The last 30 miles just wound on these dirt roads that looked like they had not seen maintenance in at least a decade. Thick trees on either side, tall pines that swallowed up the sky. As we arrived, the sun was dipping below the hills, air cooling fast around us. The place really had not changed. A wide clearing, a handful of scattered cabins, tents everywhere. The reunion was a pretty big deal for my family. People would travel from all over the state to be here. Dozens of cousins, uncles, second cousins, great aunts. The kind of family tree that sprawled out in every direction. More like a family forest, honestly. We actually got asked if we were Mormon quite often. We parked and found a spot to set up. A little patch of grass near the tree line where we could have some space but still be close enough to the others. I saw my parents first. Mom hugged me tight like it had been 10 years since we last saw each other instead of the 2 months since I'd actually last seen her. My little sister Emma was out there too, along with a flood of relatives who came by to say hello to me. Jasmine asked about our wedding plans, our jobs, our lives. Jasmine handled it pretty well, but I could tell it was taking a toll on her. Too many names, too many faces. The overwhelming warmth of a family that does not know you very well, but insists that they do. That night, we wandered off into the main camp. Fires were lit, food was cooking. Somebody had a grill going, and somebody else was passing a few beers around. The air smelled like smoke and charred meat, the sound of laughter rolling between the trees. It felt good, like maybe I had been missing something all this time, but that feeling alone would not last. The night settled in. The stars stretched endlessly overhead, scattered bright against the black. The firelight flickered. We laughed, passed around bottles, and Jasmine and I stuck close together, soaking all of it in. I was starting to feel glad that we came here. The beer was cold, and the food was indeed pretty good. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere again. Maybe it was the nostalgia, maybe the warmth of being surrounded by people who, even if they were practically strangers, still called me family. The night stretched on, and little by little, people would peel away, heading back to their own tents or cabins. The voices dimmed, and the fire burned lower. Jasmine leaned in, resting her head against my shoulder. "It's kinda nice out here," she admitted, her voice soft. I smiled. "I told you." We sat there for a while, just listening to the crickets and the distant murmurs of the last few campfires still burning. I wasn't tired, not yet, and I don't think that she was either. "One more beer?" I asked her. She nodded. "One more." I stood and stretched, but the cooler was empty. "I think I saw a big barn or something through the trees earlier," I said to her. "Probably a storage shed or something. They've got to have more drinks in there." Jasmine hesitated. "A barn?" "Yeah," I said. "Kind of weird, actually. I don't remember it being here when I was a kid." She just shrugged, and we started walking. The ground was uneven, roots snaking through the dirt. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. The firelight was fading behind us, and the woods were now closing in, trees packed tight. The barn appeared through the gaps in the branches, hunched and weathered. It wasn't falling apart, but it wasn't exactly well maintained either. Its wood looked old, aged to this deep gray. The roof was sagging slightly in the middle. I hadn't noticed it before, but now, standing in front of it, I could not shake the feeling that it didn't belong out here. Jasmine ran her fingers along the wood. Feels off, she said. Like, why is this even out here? No clue. I grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. Guess that's that, Jasmine said, exhaling a laugh. But I was not ready to give up. Not yet. I stepped around the side and ran my hand along the wall. There's gotta be another way. Inside? Jasmine sighed, but followed me. We found it. A smaller door around the side, slightly ajar. As I reached for it, this instinctive warning flashed in the back of my mind. Something just felt wrong, but in the moment I ignored it. It's just a barn, just a storage shed, nothing more. I pushed the door open. The smell was what hit me first. A thick, earthy scent, like damp wood, mixed with something sour, something familiar. It was like body odor. The space inside was massive. The ceiling was lost in shadow. Wooden beams stretched out overhead, and along the walls, shelves lined with old tools, rusted saws, and coils of thick rope. And then, at the center of the room, people. At least a dozen of them, completely naked, standing in this loose circle. Their bodies were smeared with something dark, some kind of paint. Crude symbols and shapes were covering their arms, their legs, and their faces. They were silent, completely, hands raised, fingers gently touching the skin of the person next to them. Their eyes were all closed. At the center of it all, a man taller than the rest, with his back to us. He was smeared in paint too, his skin covered in swirling, uneven lines. His head was shaved completely bald, and down to his spine, the symbols continued, jagged and rough, like they had been carved there instead of drawn on. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. Jasmine squeezed my arm so tight it began to hurt. Nobody moved, at least not at first. And that's when I noticed all of the people on the ground around them. They were having sex. That was the smell, not just body odor, but actual sex. The man at the center spoke a single word, low and slow. It was nothing I recognized, something old and foreign. Latin maybe, I don't know. Then Jasmine made a noise, a tiny, panicked gasp. The man then turned. The people on the floor froze, and for a second, we were the new focus. His face was painted completely black, except for 2 white rings drawn around his eyes. His mouth was now stretched open, lips curling around another strange word. The others moved fast. They started lunging toward us. Their movements were jerky and scared, arms outstretched, fingers clawing at the air. In a sick, twisted moment, I thought I recognized one of my cousins and one of my aunts under all of that paint. The hell were they doing out here? Obviously, I did not have time or any interest to ask. I grabbed Jasmine and we ran. We tore through the trees, branches whipping in our faces, the cold air burning in our lungs. I did not look back, and I did not dare to. That uneven ground was hard to run on, but we did not stop. Not until we saw the familiar glow of campfires ahead and the distant hum of conversation. We crashed into our campsite, breathless, shaking. I fumbled with our tent flap, yanked it open, shoving Jasmine inside. I followed and zipped it up, and then we just sat there, trying to get our breathing under control. Jasmine was shaking. "What the fuck was that?" she asked me. I did not have an answer for her. My heart was still slamming against my ribs. My body was still in fight or flight mode, brain still refusing to catch up to everything. "Was that a cult?" she said, her voice barely audible. That had to be a cult, right? What else could that have been? I just shook my head. I don't know. We sat there, listening, but outside, everything seemed to be normal. The fire crackled, and I heard somebody laugh. Nobody seemed to be looking for us. Jasmine then swallowed. "We need to leave." I nodded. "First thing in the morning, we will." Neither of us slept that night. Every little sound outside would make us flinch, even the wind moving through the trees, the distant voices. I just kept expecting to hear footsteps creeping toward our tent, the slow, steady rustle of somebody trying to circle us, but nothing happened. Eventually, the sky lightened and morning came. We were still alive. The second that sun was up, we started packing. Neither of us really even saying much. Just moved fast, stuffing sleeping bags, collapsing the tent, throwing everything in the car as quickly as possible. Every now and again, Jasmine would glance toward the trees, like she expected to see them standing there, watching, and I felt it too. It felt like we were not alone, like something had now shifted, like we stepped over a line that we were not supposed to cross. We needed an excuse though, a reason for why we were just suddenly bailing. If we just disappeared, people would notice, ask questions, and I guess we couldn't risk that. "We'll say we have some kind of appointment," I muttered, as I yanked the cooler into the truck. "Something back in the city." Jasmine just nodded. "Fine. Whatever gets us the hell out of here." But before we could leave, there was breakfast. The whole family gathered at the main camp, a long line of people plating up eggs, biscuits, bacon. The smell of food should have been comforting, right? But my stomach was twisting at the smell of it. Something felt off. And then I noticed the way that they were looking at us. And by them, I don't mean everybody. Not my mom, not my little sister, not the younger cousins, but some of them. A handful of people scattered throughout the crowd. Older relatives, a few second cousins, an uncle I barely remembered. They were watching us. Not angrily, just kind of suspiciously. Jasmine saw it too, and her grip tightened around my wrist. And then I noticed something worse than that. The paint. Little smudges of it still on their hands. Faintest streaks of it along their jawlines, careless, like they tried to scrub it off, but missed a few spots. My skin crawled, and I forced this fake smile, kept my head down as we ate, acted as normally as possible, pretended that we were not saying what we were actually saying. We set our grabby quickly, and I hugged my mom, waved my sister, gave a few nods to the rest. My uncle clapped a hand on my shoulder, grinning. His fingers lingered just a little bit too long. "You should come next year," he said. Jasmine then pulled me toward the car. "Yeah, we'll see about that," I muttered back. "No," he said again. "I mean, really, come." We fucking bolted out of there. The second that we were inside, I locked the doors, and we were gone. I did not even glance back into the rearview mirror. I just drove. The road stretched long behind us. The trees finally thinned. The sky opened up, and I finally let myself breathe a little bit. Jasmine just stared straight ahead, and neither of us spoke for a really long time. Eventually, she broke the silence. "We're never coming back here, right?" I nodded. "Never." We did not talk about it anymore either. Didn't mention the barn, the painted bodies, the way they looked at us the next morning. But occasionally, late at night, I wondered how many of them were in on this. How long had this been going on? Why the hell were they naked? And what were they going to do? It was gross, weird, and damn near traumatic. I'm glad we left when we did. Back in the summer after 12th grade, 2011, my coworkers and I were talking at work when my boss mentioned hiring a clown for her daughter's birthday party. Without hesitation, 4 of us, myself included, shouted in unison, "No clowns." We were not joking. As kids and teens, we all had a genuine fear of clowns, and it wasn't something that we took lightly. This is a true story. After graduation, we all felt invincible. Most of our high school friends had survived the chaos, and we were scattered, heading off to college, starting jobs, moving, or even getting married. The summer was our last taste of freedom before the real world hit. Behind our neighborhood, on the street just past the backyards, lived a man we all avoided, mid-40s, nearly bald, pudgy, and just off. His yard was a graveyard of junk, rusted car parts, broken statues, weird welded sculptures that no one could make sense of. One vaguely looked like a mangled Megatron. Parents warned kids to steer clear, and everyone knew he blasted loud classic rock, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, blaring from his beat-up 70s car, stripped to a primer. You could hear that junker coming from miles away, ripping through stop signs, tires squealing. My friend David and his buddy Jose dared each other to ring this man's doorbell one summer Friday. They both went at it, ringing it simultaneously. The door flew open, and out stormed the man, shotgun in hand, screaming about commie bastards. They bolted, straight to my house. They burst into my garage, slammed the door, and giggled like idiots hiding from a monster. I asked what happened, but they just shushed me. Minutes later, the man's car roared past again, Led Zeppelin blaring. I asked again. David tried to downplay it, but Jose was not having it. He scolded them for dragging trouble to my house, telling them if they wanted to get themselves killed over the summer, to do it somewhere else. Nothing else happened that day. Months later, in October, we went to a Halloween scare night at a big theme park. I'm not usually into that stuff, but hanging out with friends was fun. The park was full of people in costume and hired actors meant to scare visitors. Most were over the top and lively, but one clown caught my eye. He stood out because he was not lively at all. The greasy yellow suit, bright red wig, painted face, oversized shoes and nose. It was the classic clown look, but his eyes locked on us and he did not blink, just stared. Jose was complaining about needing the bathroom, so we hit a scare house and then moved toward the food court. The clown passed us, glancing at David and me, then slipped into the bathroom where Jose had just gone. Seconds later, Jose came running out, laughing maniacally and then frantic, telling us the clown man had followed him inside. Apparently, the clown stood outside Jose's stall and whispered his real name. He threatened to introduce him to Mr. Hammer once he came out. He banged on the door, laughing like a madman. Jose had a meltdown. We tried to convince him it was probably a park employee trying to up his scare game, but none of us felt comfortable after that. We stuck around though. We stuck around for a few more hours, but kept seeing that clown lurking nearby. Eventually, we left. Then things got truly terrifying. Back at David's house, we hung outside, talking about life after high school. As we reached the streetlight at the end of the block, the man's beat-up car roared around the corner on two wheels. The engine growled like an angry beast. He blasted his horn, shining headlights right at the sidewalk where we stood. We all jumped and scattered. Jose yelled, "What the hell, you crazy man?" I looked at the driver's seat, the clown from the theme park. He climbed out, snarling with a thick, odd New York accent. "Yeah, you call me a freaking clown. You broke my sculptures. You thought I forgot? Guess what? You got your clown right here. I'm butt-fuck the clown." We bolted, but he jumped back in his car and chased us. We scrambled over fences, cutting through yards, desperate to lose him. We reached a neighborhood walking trail and paused to catch our breath, only to hear screeching tires and pounding footsteps behind us. "There he is," he growled. "I told you I would introduce you to Mr. Hammer, you disrespectful brats." We turned and ran, back toward the street. A man was outside, watching his yard, likely wondering why his mailbox had just been smashed. We begged him for help, told him about the crazy clown chasing us. He did not believe us until the clown appeared again, hammer in hand. The man suddenly pulled a gun, shouting, "Police, drop the hammer and get on the ground." The clown froze, still gripping the hammer, but he did not move. Soon, patrol officers arrived and arrested him. The clown insisted we were harassing him, calling us communist spies, claiming he had to show us the hammer of justice. They took our statements and mentioned the earlier theme park incident. The clown was arrested a week later. David finally admitted that summer he and Jose had dared each other to ring the crazy man's doorbell again, but they had also knocked over one of his sculptures and shouted insults to lure him outside. They never expected a shotgun or a manhunt. I was furious at David for dragging me and my parents into that mess. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Think I got cursed after fucking around on Navajo land. Arizona resident here. Went illegally camping out with two friends a week or so ago, near Page on the res, within view of Navajo Mountain. We were drinking, loud, generally not very respectful, and we left a few things when we were packing up. One friend whistled and made fun of the skinwalker superstition, which we told him to cut it out, just in case. Nothing notable happened during the day, apart from a feeling of being watched for a few minutes, which I chalked up to the drinking. It did not seem like any of my friends felt it. Now, I've come back to Prescott, and I am not sure if this is just an insane series of coincidences or what. Had a dream, which I rarely dream, shortly after returning, that I found 3 recorders, the instruments, lying on the ground in front of me in an old childhood neighborhood. One was a shitty, cracked clear plastic one. Another, a high-quality plastic one with some ornamentation. The last, a beautiful, wooden and carved one with golden accents. I was somehow aware that these belonged to a neighbor my family was close to when we lived there. In a dream, I picked up all 3 to take with me, but got annoyed at not having a free hand by carrying all 3, so I decided to return the shittiest recorder at my neighbor's doorstep. The second I set it down, an extremely dissonant and grating droning noise started playing all around me. The sky darkened with clouds in seconds, the wind picked up to a howl, and I felt the most malicious presence I've ever felt in my life staring at me from behind. I turn around, and this figure that looks like a blend of a demon and a witch dressed in black robes and a wide-brimmed black hat is raising its arm at me. It makes a flickering motion and sends my body into the air, then flicks me back down, head first into the ground. I distinctly remember getting the impression, in the dream, that this was not the first time I had encountered this being. Woke up drenched in a cold sweat at like 2 a.m. On to the next experience. My dad lives not far away from me, in Dewey Humboldt, so I visit him occasionally. His neighborhood is dark as fuck at night, so it's a little spooky, making the 2 or so minute walk back to the car when I leave after dark, but nothing intolerable with a flashlight. Well, as I was leaving after visiting him, the second I stepped out of the door, I got the distinct impression that I would encounter a canine of some sort. A large dog, a coyote, a wolf, I'm not sure, but my brain was screaming at me that I was going to encounter one. I made up an excuse to have my dad walk with me to the car because I have never had my intuition scream at me like that before. The entire drive back, I feel like someone is staring daggers into my back and neck. The walk from my car to the apartment is at most 30 seconds, but I feel like I am about to be attacked the entire time. The instant I close the door behind me, and I truly do mean immediately, the coyotes around the neighborhood and in the nearby zoo start howling, and they keep howling for a good 5 minutes. Last experience happened last night, which compelled me to make this post. I work closing at a fast food place in Prescott Valley, and as I was clocking out at like 11 p.m., I see a coyote moving around the area, when it stops and looks at me. Mind you, I was completely silent and still watching this thing, and it immediately whips around and locks onto me from a good 200 to 300 feet. It did not even flinch when a car drove by around 20 feet away from it, as it continued to stare at me before turning around and sauntering off into the bushes. I am usually not a superstitious type, but I feel that these events, all within 5 days of each other, is a little hard to ignore. Unsure what to think of all of this. In the fall of 2021, I was living alone for the first time in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. Even though I was 27 with a steady job and routine, I was nervous about living by myself. I'd just gone through a rough breakup and thought the quiet might help me process everything. The townhouse was part of a small row of identical units, plain, but clean and tucked away in a sleepy cul-de-sac off a rural highway. The neighborhood had that sterile, suburban vibe. Beige vinyl sliding, trimmed hedges, wind chimes, and mailboxes with family names stenciled on them. Mostly older folks, some young families. I did not know my neighbors very well, and I liked it that way. Almost immediately, I noticed one man who stood out. 3 doors down lived a tall, heavy-set guy in his mid-40s with a scruffy beard and a strange habit of standing outside his house at night. Sometimes he paced or smoked. Other times he just stood there motionless, staring blankly into the street. I would pull into my driveway after work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he would be, leaning on his porch rail or standing at the edge of his driveway, never waving, never smiling, just staring. Even if I looked directly at him, he never acknowledged me. I mentioned it to my friends and my mom. They said maybe he was a night owl or had insomnia. But something about him felt off. Not just that he was there, but how still he was. No fidgeting, no checking his phone, no shifting his weight, just like a statue. I told myself not to be paranoid, but then, in mid-September, the noises started. I would get home late from my overnight shift at a distribution center, usually around 10:30 p.m., exhausted, grabbing food, then crashing. One night, I fell asleep around midnight, only to wake at exactly 2:47 a.m., to the sound of metal scraping wood. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then came a long, slow creaking noise, like an old gate opening. My bedroom was on the first floor at the back, with a sliding glass door leading to a fenced backyard. I sat up, heart racing. Then I heard soft crunching, footsteps across the gravel that lined my yard. These were no animal sounds. Grabbing my phone and a dull kitchen knife from my nightstand, I peeked through the blinds. The motion light was not on, so either they were out of range or entered another way. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm and said officers were on their way. About 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through my front window. I met the two officers outside and explained everything. One checked the backyard and said the gate was closed. No signs of tampering, no footprints, no damage. They would file a report, but saw no crime. One officer even said, probably just a raccoon, giving me a look like I was wasting their time. I did not argue, but I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I went to check the backyard. I found a flat stone about the size of a paperback book wedged under the bottom edge of the gate. The gate had a heavy spring that usually made it close automatically, but the stone stopped it from shutting completely, something subtle, like someone wanted to slip in quietly later. I threw the stone across the yard and called the police again. They noted it, but said that there was not much they could do without a crime. 2 nights later, it escalated. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke to the back door handle rattling. First a gentle turn, then a harder jiggle, like someone testing if it would open. I sat up, heart hammering, mouth dry. Through a tiny gap in the blinds, I saw a shadow move, a man standing just outside. He didn't run or hide. The motion light clicked on, and I caught a glimpse of him. I called the police again. The same 2 officers showed up, and this time found footprints, big ones, in the gravel leading right to my door. Still, since no break-in happened, there was nothing more they could do. They promised to patrol more and told me to keep my doors locked. The next day, I installed 2 mid-range Wi-Fi security cameras, one over the back door and another above the front porch. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the live feed on my phone, lights off, waiting. 2:14 came and went. Nothing happened. At 2:23 a.m., the back camera triggered. A man stepped into frame, tall, broad, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up, jeans and gloves. He moved like he knew exactly how to avoid the motion sensor until the last second. He walked right up to the door, looked directly at the camera, and gave a slow, stretched out grin before backing away into the dark. I called the police again. They admitted it was creepy, but said since he had not broken in or damaged anything, there was nothing they could do. They refused to even ask the neighbor to check his doorbell camera. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a hotel. The next day, I came back to find 4 muddy handprints on the glass door, too high, too low, like someone had crouched and rested their hands there, just staring inside. I moved out a week later, breaking my lease and forfeiting my deposit. I could not stay another night. The final straw was a note left in my mailbox the day I left, handwritten in cramped letters on lined paper. It said, "The cops leave, but I don't." I filed one last police report. The officer sounded genuinely disturbed and promised to do wellness checks in the neighborhood, but it was too late. I never went back. About a month later, I got a Facebook message from a girl named Kayla, the new tenant. She asked if I ever had someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard. She said she kept hearing footsteps at night and that someone had knocked on the glass door around 2 a.m. and just stood there. I never replied. I did not want to know. I've had a few scary paranormal events, but I'd rather not share. But this is not 100% paranormal, but it was freaky. Last night, 2 a.m., sitting outside smoking cigarette, drinking beer. Dumpster outside garage, townhouse, 20 feet away. He was scratching, light banging. Walk out of garage and see Raccoon trying to open the dumpster. It has 2 doors. He is standing on one, trying to open the other. He notices me and I say, "What are you doing? Get out of here." He jumps down, then just sits, looking at me. Walk back to garage, sit back down in my chair. Hear tip tap of Raccoon feet coming toward me. It is fall, and leaves are on the ground. He stops 3 or 4 feet away, sits down. Raccoon walks 2 steps away, turns around, looks at me, walks 2 more steps, turns, looks at me, repeats 3 or 4 more times. He is fucking beckoning me over to the dumpster. I follow him to the dumpster and open it and sit back down in my chair, finish my cigarette, and go back inside. It's so fucking odd that a raccoon would do that. I know it's not paranormal, but it gave me the fucking heebie-jeebies. They are not supposed to communicate in any fashion.